Hi everyone, this is Mr. Trio again, and today we will be talking about the C question for paper number 1. This is often referred to as how far do you agree question. And there are many moving parts on this particular question, so buckle up and let's give it a shot. This is the information from the marking scheme from the curriculum. As I've noted before, this is a more technical question that is essentially evaluating you on two separate factors. Factor number 1 is the fact of your knowledge and understanding of the period. And as you can see in this particular example, you can earn up to 7 marks, which means that if you are answering the question with just facts, even if everything that you say is 100% correct, and you're given names and dates and places and all that kind of good stuff that make essays compelling, the highest mark you could receive is a 7. The 9 marks that you can add on top of it are the higher order concepts, such as explaining, analysis, making judgments, and second order concepts. And we'll go into more of this as we get a little further into the presentation. My class studies Germany as one of the topics, but just as a reminder, this particular presentation applies to any of the topics that you may be studying. It can apply to superpower relations, Germany, or, for whatever one you choose. The most important thing is understanding the way that the question is structured. The question always begins with a statement, and that is the focus of your answer. So in this particular case, the sample question is, reparations were the harshest penalty placed on Germany by the Versailles settlement. That means that you need to focus on the Versailles settlement. Even if you were to give wonderful information about the other treaties that ended the First World War, the ones that were associated with the Ottoman Empire or the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, then it would be off topic. You have to be specific. These types of statements often refer to specific time periods. They may even give a date range. If you go before or after the date range, you're off topic. So it's important to be on focus. Now, the other part which is important is what are called stimulus points. The first stimulus point is always the focus of the question. So in this particular case, you shouldn't be surprised that the first bullet point is reparations. The second bullet point, guilt clause, is also related to the Versailles settlement. It is in your best interest to always discuss these 2 bullet points along with another one of your own. That means that you essentially need to discuss 3 different aspects and try to argue which one is the most important. Or in this particular case, which one was the most harsh. Here's some details, 4 important things that you should know about the question. Obviously, this one is the big one. This is the one that is worth 16 marks, and you should be spending approximately half of your 45 minutes working out the C question. Don't forget the stimulus points. They're there to help you. If you ignore the stimulus points, then more than likely you'll be off topic. The stimulus points are not there to trick you. Usually the stimulus points are pointing you in the right direction, so use them. Opposed to the A and the B question, this is a response that really needs a full essay, and we'll go into that a little bit later. And then the last thing that you should know about the C question, and this is a good thing, is that they always give you 2 to choose from. So look at each of the C questions and choose the one you know the best. Don't spend too much time making up your decision. After all, you only have 45 minutes per topic. In an ideal world, this is the structure of your essay. You would have a beautiful introduction providing background. In the case of this particular question, you would want to talk a little bit about the Versailles settlement and tell the reader a little bit more about that. You should also provide essentially your number one, your number two, and your number three reasons of which of the penalties was the most harsh. You don't need to go into a lot of detail, but essentially your introduction or the top of your hamburger essay, if you want to think of it that way, should essentially let the reader know these are the three things that I will be discussing. I find introductions to be a useful thing because it helps to organize your ideas before you get into the main part of your essay, the stimulus 1.2, and then your third one. The part of the essay which often you will not get to if you are rushed for time is the conclusion. If you don't get to the conclusion, it's not the end of the world. So try to at least get through the introduction and points 1, 2, and 3. The conclusion, that's just extra. That's one of the ways that you can bring your essay to a thoughtful conclusion. Now, I know a lot of writers want to follow their own way of thinking, but one of the things that really can help with addressing the C question is having discipline. And that means that when you get into the stimulus portion of that paragraph, follow a pattern. This is the pattern that I recommend. First, make an argument. Second, explain all the details. Then you get into your analysis, and then you get to your final judgment. We'll get into a sample of this in just a minute, but I just want to lay out, once again, don't try to reinvent your essay on the day of the exam. Have it already in place and then follow the pattern. This will essentially help you get into the regular practice of breaking down the information and coming up with responses which are indicative of the question. I think that we've talked about this before, but I'm going to take a little bit more time about it here. Here are 5 examples of second-order concepts which you can use in your analysis: causation, change, continuity, significance, and insignificance. The reason why I have these here and why I wanted to stop here for a second is that change is one of the ways that you can show that something is more important, or using a second-order concept like significance. However, one of the other things that you can do is by using second-order concepts like continuity or insignificance, you can essentially create a reason why these are not as important. So if the stimulus point brought about an insignificant result, then you can show that that is not as important. We'll look at an example. So here's the question once again. Reparations were the harshest penalty placed on Germany by the Versailles settlement. How far do you agree? Explain your answer. Blah, blah, blah. Stimulus point, stimulus point. Use your own knowledge. This is what essentially I mean by following the approach. So I'm going to use the causation argument in this particular case. Reparations were the most important punishment placed on Germany by the Versailles settlement. All right, that's your argument. Reparations, money to be paid by Germany to the Allies, were used to rebuild areas of Europe that Germany had destroyed during the war. This is where you get into the explanation. This is where you're given the details. Now, I only have a few words here, but this is where you could elaborate much, much more. For example, if you knew exactly how much reparations were being asked, then you can put that dollar amount in. Or I guess it really wouldn't be a dollar amount, it would be the Reichmark or whatever the currency they used at that time. The more specific that you can be, of course, the better. Now let's get into our second order concept. And this is where you really begin to shine by showing that you understand how one thing leads to another. This action is directly responsible for causing a shortage of hard currency in Germany, which led to hyperinflation. All right, so now you're going a little bit further into explaining this. And once again, this is just sort of a snapshot. You could provide far more information about the occupation of the Ruhr and all sorts of different things related to this. Finally, with the overall judgment, the poor economy undermined all aspects of German life and made the government to appear weak. Remember, at the end of each paragraph, try to come up with your overall and explain why you are essentially arguing that this was the most important. Now, this is a good time that if you wanted to stop the presentation and pause and you can look at it a little bit more. I won't read every single one, but once again, one of the things is that you can apply many different types of second order concepts to different stimulus points. This one is about significance. And then this is the one that I was telling you about a little earlier, continuity. This is where you could essentially argue that continuity shows that it was not as important. I hope that this particular presentation has been helpful. Please keep in mind that the C question is the most difficult. There are lots of factors that are involved, such as time constraints. But if you follow a pattern and you get into the practice of using that pattern, then on the day of the exam, well, you'll be prepared. Once again, look at the Pearson website for resources. There's a lot of things that you can download. And also look to the blue pages on the official textbooks that go into further explanations. Thank you for joining me for this presentation.